Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about something that just came out recently about gun violence actually being the worst in red states. Red states have the highest suicides and they also have the highest homicides and murders in the country. But if you listen to especially these governors and the media in this country, you would think it was bad everywhere else. But this is how them folks are. Anything that don't make them look good, they try to hide it or bury it. So let's get into this story that recently came out. Gun violence is actually worse in red states. It's not even close. So if you listen to these, especially these governors from the South in America, you would think New York was the most dangerous place on earth. And it simply is not true. Now, don't get me wrong, New York definitely have its problem with crime. But some of these governors speaking from red states, their gun violence is far worse. So in October, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis proclaimed crime was out of control in New York and blamed it on George Soros. Another Sunshine State, former Governor Donald Trump offered his narrative. City as a Democratic, he was blaming the city's violence on the Democrats. Okay. But But we're going to talk a little deeper about that. And y'all also remember in May of 2022, the hours after 19 children were shot to death at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, the governor, Greg Abbott, was giving a statement and he brought up Chicago, LA, and New York as if that's far worse than Texas. And that's not even panning out to be true when it comes down to gun violence. So, in comparison to Florida and Texas, the Big Apple is actually far safer when it comes down to gun violence. While there are regions in Florida and Texas belong to have per capita firearm death rates, homicides, and suicides are 3 to 4 times higher than the gun violence in New York. Just understand when it comes down to propaganda, propaganda is always played against us. It's designed to make it seem like wherever we live, it is just the worst places in the country to be. You're not safe there. But actually, you're really not safe in a red state. So, mm, mm, mm. On a regional basis, it's the southern swaths of the country in cities and rural areas alike where the rate of deadly gun violence is the most acute, regions where Republicans have dominated state governments for decades. That's where you got the most gun violence. So, reasons for the disparities go beyond modern policy differences and extend back to events that predate not only the American party system, but the advent of gunshots, revolvers, ammunition, cartridges, breech loaded rifles, and American Republic itself. The geography of gun violence and and public and elite area. These ideas are, you got to understand, if these people feel like they can't beat you on the facts, then they try to beat you in fantasy. That's how they operate. They try to, almost like witchcraft, If I can't beat you in reality with the numbers, then I'll try to make you believe otherwise. That's the game they play. Okay, so once you understand how the country was colonized and by whom, a number of insights into the problems are revealed. To do so, you need more accurate information on the regional cultures. Forget the US Census divisions, you know, so which is arbitrarily divide the country into Northeast, Midwest, South, and West using meaningless boundaries and, leaving most people willfully ignorant. So the reason the US has a strong regional differences is because of the swath of the North American continent was settled by rival colonial projects that have very little in common, often despise one another and spread without regarding for today's state boundaries. Well, like I said, you started a country in violence, and it's always going to be violent. The colonial projects was the Puritan controlled New England. The Dutch settled around the area, which is now New York City. The Quaker founded Delaware Valley. The Scots, Irish, led upland, backcountry, the Appalachians. The West Indies style slave society in the Deep South, the Spanish project, the Southwest, and so on, had different religions. They had differences economically, different ideologies, characteristics. They were rivals and sometimes enemies with the British, the ones up to oppose sides, and they had a lot of conflict with the British. They did, especially around the 1640s. But you notice they never told you about all these conflicts they had, the Puritans and the Quakers and, the Scots, Irish, and the conflicts and the Spanish. They didn't tell you about that, but there were conflicts. Mm-mm-mm. So, ladies and gentlemen, some states lie entirely and almost entirely within one of these regional cultures. Others are split between them, propelling constant and profound disagreements on politics and policies alike in places like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois, California, and Oregon. Places you might not think have much in common. Southwest Pennsylvania and Texas Hill Country, for instance, are actually at the beginning and end of well documented settlement streams. In case one dominated by generations of Scot Irish and lowland Scot settlers moving to the 18th century Pennsylvania frontier and later down the Grand Wagon Road to settle the upland parts of Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, and Tennessee, into the Ozarks, north in central Texas, and southern Oklahoma. Similar colonization movements link Maine and Minnesota, Charleston and Houston, Pennsylvania Dutch country, in central Iowa. Hmm. So they said in order to understand the gun violence being higher in red states, you really got to go back to the beginning when all the colonies were formed, you know? But the next time, these governors say something about gun violence and it being worse in New York and LA they're not telling you the truth. Really, the best thing for you to do is look up the gun statistics in these red states when you hear them talking like that. And you will understand why the media, and they're all in cahoots with each other, these governors make sure that is never revealed about their states. They don't. And, it makes me laugh because I remember how David Clark used to be on Fox News. Yeah, they got rid of him too. And he used to always try to talk against the ghetto and the inner city. And yeah, those places are violent. Every place in America is violent. But even in those places, the gun violence is not as high as it is in the red states. But they're going to play this propaganda game with you, and they're going to keep playing it over and over because the goal is to always make where we live, Chicago and New York, where those Negroes live, is far worse than any other place in the country. They've been lying all along. They are lying to you every single day. There is no place that got gun violence worse than red states in this country. But if you listen to them, you would think every place else was far worse. But it just goes to show you how deep they have gone with this propaganda game. So, what it's saying is historically and even to present day, gun violence, even in the beginning when the colonies were being formed, were still worse in these red states than anywhere else. And that has never, ever changed. Never changed. So, as it was in the beginning, that's the way it will be in the end. Y'all, please tell me what you think about this video. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.